everyone, I'm Sam from the IELTS Teacher, and today I'm going to be correcting an essay a student sent to me. Now this essay is about the internet and advantages and problems with the internet, particularly in terms of controlling and securing information, and it's an opinion-only essay. In this video I'm going to be correcting errors and band scoring the essay and explaining my reasons involved in it. I think this correction is particularly useful to show the importance of paraphrasing the view in the question accurately, because that's an area that this writer really falls short on and, as you'll see, becomes quite detrimental to his band score. This person's writing is also very good in terms of coherence and cohesion. The organization of his essay is excellent, it's nearly flawless, and the sentences all link together, the support all adds up, it's very well crafted. He also uses a great range of vocabulary effectively and meaningfully for explaining his ideas. So yeah, I think you have a lot to gain from this video. So let's get started. We live in a world of technology these days. While the internet brings with it clear advantages, the problems in terms of control and security of information outweigh the advantages. To what extent do you agree? We live in a world of technology these days. So what? Not very significant, that sentence, I think. While the internet brings with it clear advantages, this question is about the internet. Brings with it clear advantages of the internet. The problems in terms of control and security of information. Right, so advantages and problems. Not just any problems though. Problems specifically related to this in particular. Control and security of information outweigh the advantages. So, okay, the view in the question then, this opinion, is that the problems of the internet that are related to control and security of information are more powerful than any benefit the internet can bring. That's the view here. And the question that we have to answer is, to what extent do you agree? So this question is only asking for your opinion. To what extent do you agree with what? Well, with this view. We live in a world of technology these days. Not very relevant to this question. This question is specifically about the internet, not about some other kind of technology. So I'm not going to pay attention to that really. What I'll expect from the writer in the introduction then is that they will have to paraphrase this view. They'll have to give this view accurately, because if they give a slightly different view, then that could be a really big problem for task achievement, because then any opinion they give about the view will be incorrect, will not be answering the question. So very important that this is paraphrased accurately. They'll have to include this view and they'll have to include their opinion about it in the introduction. In the body paragraphs, there should be reasons for writer's opinion. So okay, let's have a look and see what they wrote. So to begin with, I'm going to go through the essay and correct any and all vocabulary and grammar errors. I won't be focusing so much on trying to understand what the writer wants to convey, their arguments, or if their support works with their arguments, or how well it answers the question. First, I'm going to check that the vocabulary and grammar is good, and then I can go back and try to make sense of it more and band score the task achievement like that. So let's make a start. Some people believe that drawbacks of controlling and securing information using the internet outweighs its benefits. Some people believe that drawbacks of controlling, well, he's being specific here. Drawbacks, not just any drawbacks, but these particular drawbacks, so the drawbacks then. The drawbacks of controlling and securing information. Well, these are not clearly drawbacks. There's nothing really wrong with securing or controlling information. I think what he means to say is something like this: not being able to control and secure information. We could add in something else here. Effectively when. So okay, if you're not able to do anything effectively, then that's quite clearly a bad thing. That's quite clearly a drawback. So this makes it a lot clearer. When using the internet outweighs, what's the subject of outweighs? What outweighs its benefits? Well, he's talking about the drawbacks. The drawbacks outweigh the benefits. But drawbacks is a plural, so the form of this verb, present simple, needs to change as well. Outweigh its benefits. This seems a bit unclear, really. What does it refer to? Because he mentions information here, but also the internet. It could be clearer. So we could change that to be outweigh the benefits the internet offers. Okay, that works. In this essay, I'll explain why I believe the utilization of the internet does more good than harm. Looks good? Moving on. One of the most significant negatives of the internet is that it is difficult for governments to control information. This is because people can use the internet anonymously. For instance, without using real names, people could use the internet to spread fake news in online forums. This is a bit off, really. Could is more used for more specific situations, like at a specific time or in a specific place. For instance, it's raining right now, so if I were to go outside to do some shopping in a few minutes, I could get wet. It's possible that could happen. You notice with that example, that's at a specific time, a specific kind of situation. Here, I see that he means to be more general here, like any time that people use the internet. This is what usually happens, generally happens. It's more in general, so can needs to be used here instead. Since it is extremely difficult to trace the source of incorrect information online, people may easily be misled by the information they read on the internet. Great, yeah, this paragraph seems very accurate. Just the one grammar error, I would call it there. However, the internet does provide us some important and useful features. One of them is enhancing people's connection around the world. Connections, I think he must be talking about relationships, contacts, people around the world. So that needs to be a plural. And he's talking about any and all connections, many of them, not just one. As there have been more access to computer and the internet, have, what does have relate to? It relates to access. That's an uncountable noun, or at least here it is. So has. As there has been more access to computer, computer's a countable noun. So a computer, the computer, computers. He's talking about any and all computers, computers in general, so it needs to be a plural. More access to computers and the internet available nowadays. There's a couple of problems here. Nowadays doesn't really match with the present perfect that he's using here. Something happens nowadays, or something is happening nowadays. It's like present simple and present continuous is more used with nowadays. In recent years could be used with present perfect. Available, if you have more access to something, then that basically already means that it is available. Having more access to something available doesn't really go together. They don't work. So that can't be included. Video chatting and online conference. How many conferences? Any and all conferences, right? So a plural. Are becoming more popular. Well, like before, he used present perfect and we're using in recent years. This is talking about in recent years still. So present continuous doesn't really work here. We could have been becoming popular. The present perfect continuous instead. We can call our friends or relatives who live overseas and see their faces in real time using the internet. Cool. In contrast, if the internet were not invented, we would have to spend more time and money to maintain social relationships. There's another one. In general, any and all. Besides, the internet makes our lives easier. This is a bit informal, actually, using besides in this way. This is more how you would use it in speaking than in writing. Besides this, would be an improvement. That would help it. The reason for this is that we can do many things online. For example, we can purchase food and clothes just by clicking buttons on computer. Well, he's talking about just one computer here. You only click buttons on one computer to do this thing for purchasing. On a computer at home. Such convenience is possible only because of the internet. Great, okay, everything else looks good. In conclusion, although there are disadvantages to the internet, to using the internet would be better here, such as controlling and securing information. This is the same problem as before. These are not disadvantages really, such as not being able to control and secure information so well. Could be a way to paraphrase effectively. These must be weighed against the social and time-saving benefits that the internet offers. This is not very necessary. He's already mentioned in the first clause. Like, we already know that he's talking about the internet. This is all part of the same structure. Although there are this, with using the internet, there are also this. So it's already understood that he's talking about the internet, so this is very unnecessary. Personally, I believe these benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Great, okay then. There are no more vocabulary or grammar errors in the writing, so now I'm going to go through the writing again and study it in terms of task achievements, like, do his arguments make sense? Does the support match with the arguments? Do they help to answer the question, which is supporting his opinion in this case? And this kind of thing. So let's have a look. Okay, so with my corrections, the introduction is great. It's very clear, it's addressing the question accurately, and his opinion is also clear. The internet does more good than harm, so it's pretty clear that he disagrees with this view. He thinks the opposite, basically. Regardless of the problems of this kind, the advantages are always better. They ultimately are better. Yep, that's pretty cool. That requires my corrections though, because without the corrections, this is quite confusing and not clear at all, basically, because these are not drawbacks. You know, if I was reading the introduction without the question, I'd be kind of lost. I'd be like, what's he talking about? Or what's the essay about exactly? From what I remember from the rest of his essay, though, I think he does know what he's talking about. I think he understands what the view in the question is. So I'm inclined to count this as more of a vocabulary error, more of a paraphrasing problem than a lack of understanding of the question. So I'm not going to count that towards the task achievement just yet. One of the most significant negatives of the internet is that it's difficult for governments to control information. I like his topic sentence of this body paragraph. It's very clear. It tells me that this paragraph will be addressing the problems mentioned in the question. He mentions negatives. He restates the internet, so I know he's still on topic. It's still about that. And he gives his first argument very clearly as well. Difficult for governments to control information. Controlling information is what's mentioned in the question as well. So it's all on task. It's all on topic. It's because people can use the internet anonymously. So people can use the internet anonymously is explaining a bit about why it's difficult for governments to control information. Still not completely clear, but it's getting there. We'll see what happens in the next sentence. For instance, without using real names, people can use the internet to spread fake news and forums. Right, spreading fake news is quite clearly related to controlling information. And, well, fake news is something obviously bad, so that's quite clear. Since the exchange to trace the source of incorrect information online, people may be easily misled by the information they read on the internet. This also quite clearly explains why this is a problem. What is wrong here? I think in terms of task achievement, this paragraph is great. It's very clear and very relevant to the question, and it's explaining the negative. Something I think could improve this paragraph, though, is a bit more of a focus on security of information. It is kind of hinted at in the paragraph, but not so developed or directly stated, I feel. I mean, fake news, sure, it seems like it's something about security of information, but he doesn't directly say about that. A bit more about security of information, I think, would help this body paragraph. For instance, he could talk about cyber attacks, hackers stealing personal information, login details to social media, or bank account details. Something like this would much more clearly highlight security of information, I think. So, I'm inclined to think a 7 for task achievement so far, because for an 8 I would expect that much more support. Let's carry on though. How's he do in the next paragraph? His topic sentence in this paragraph is also very good. Important and useful features quite clearly tells me that this is going to be about the advantages that's mentioned in the question and in his opinion. One of them is enhancing people's connections around the world. Quite clearly something good as well. You enhance relationships, connections. It's obviously a good thing. He's explaining here a bit more about how the internet is related to connections, to relationships. There's video chatting, online conferences. And he goes into more detail here about how that works. So with this technology, you can call your friends who live overseas. So that's addressing this earlier part of his argument as well about around the world. Yeah, and he gives an alternative sentence here which helps explain it a little bit more about why it would be bad if there was no internet. Actually, I see another problem here. In contrast, if the internet were not invented. This is a bit odd here, actually, because the internet was invented in the past. So what he's considering here is more of an unreal past event. So I think it would be more accurate to use a third conditional type language, the past perfect. In contrast, if the internet had not been invented, we would have to spend more time and money to maintain social relationships. Right, okay, that makes more sense. So if that had not happened in the past, what would happen now? We would have to spend more time and money to maintain social relationships. Besides this, the internet makes our lives easier. Again, very clearly an advantage. That's good. There's a reason for that. And he explains that. Yeah, this is all very clear. I don't see that support could be improved in that way. In this conclusion, everything is good except for these problems again. These same errors. If it happens once, I would think that it's more of a vocabulary paraphrasing error. But he does it again, which is enough to give me doubt, really. It makes me think, has he really understood the question? I mean, from the body paragraphs, it seems that he has, but the body paragraphs are like 2/3 of his essay, and the introduction and conclusion are like 1/3 of his essay. It's enough to give me doubt, so I'm more thinking a 6 would be more likely. What about coherence and cohesion then? About the introduction, it all works fine. The sentences connect well. He mentions the internet in the first sentence, and he explains the first view, and the second sentence is giving his view. And it's all very easy to follow, really. First body paragraph, like I mentioned, I really like his topic sentences. They're very easy to follow, and they tell me exactly what the paragraph is going to be about and how it's relevant for answering the question and supporting his opinion. Very clear stuff, so that's really good. He uses keys, devices, and discourse markers like this one very effectively as well. This is because this, what does this refer to? It's difficult for governments to control information because of the internet, because people can use the internet anonymously. Yeah, that works. That makes sense. For instance, so now he's giving an example to help explain what he's claimed before without reusing real names. That's paraphrasing anonymously for sure. use the internet. He's referring back to the internet. Spread fake news is about controlling information in online forums. Since it's extremely difficult to trace, difficult for governments to control information? Yeah, that matches. Maybe easily misled. Yeah, it all fits together. His sentences link and are logical. He doesn't overuse discourse markers either. Like here, a discourse marker is not really needed, and so he doesn't include one, and it works fine. It's great. Again, with the second body paragraph, the topic sentence is very clear. He starts with this discourse marker, which helps the flow of the essay. It helps this transition, so the second body paragraph doesn't start so abruptly. It helps prepare the reader a bit, however, this is going to be something different. This is going to be something different to the previous paragraph, and it is. It's about advantages. One of them, what's them? One of the useful features. Enhancing people's connections. This all matches up very nicely as well. The video chatting and online conferences is quite clearly related to the technology, to the internet. And it is hinting about communication, about relationships. But he gets more into that in the next sentence. Call our friends overseas. That all links up. Again, he doesn't use any discourse markers here, but I don't see that there's any needed, really. It's all very clear. He uses one here, which I think is very well placed. Tells the reader, okay, now I'm going to consider what if we didn't have the internet? What if it hadn't been invented? And he does that. This part, I wouldn't really count this as a coherence cohesion issue. He was being a bit too informal before, is how I feel. But I would more count that as perhaps a bit of a task achievement issue or vocabulary issue. This is the only instance of informal language though, so I don't think it's really worth getting bothered about. Never mind, is what I think. The reason for this, reason for what? That the internet makes our lives easier because we can do many things online. Yes, that makes sense, that works. For example, an example of what? We doing things online and it's easier, makes our lives easier. We can purchase food and clothes just by clicking buttons. Sure, sounds very easy. Such convenience is possible only because of the internet. This is quite a complex kind of referencing here as well. A lot of writers make mistakes with using such. Such basically means this kind of convenience. What kind of? Well, purchasing things. That kind of convenience by clicking buttons. So it works well. Lastly, in conclusion, a very familiar discourse marker, but it does the job. Very clearly tells the reader this paragraph is concluding the essay. These benefits, which benefits? Well, he just mentioned them. Yeah, very good. I'd say the coherence and cohesion is nearly flawless. There was actually, I just realized in the introduction, there is a bit of unclear referencing here, which would count against the coherence and cohesion. It's just one instance though, so I don't really want to hit him hard for that. Apart from that, there are some errors which reduce the coherence a bit, I think. Like this part here was particularly confusing for me the first time I read it because of the issue with the verb tense and with matching this with access. Like, you have more access or you have more access available? What's the difference? Well, why include available? So that was a bit of an issue. Apart from this, there is this piece of text here which is not necessary. So it's kind of unnecessary repetition. That could also count a bit against the coherence and cohesion. Given all that then, I'm going to be particularly harsh. When I'm in doubt, I generally try to go in the direction of being harsh because I think that helps prepare people a bit more. I hope it's not too demoralizing, but I think it's better to be surprised in the exam than feel like you're fully prepared and then get disappointed. So, a particularly harsh score I'm going to give it then is a 7. I would completely understand though if someone gave it an 8 instead, because the coherence cohesion in this is very good. A 9 though? No, I don't think so. I think the problems I mentioned would have to be corrected for sure. The unnecessary repetition, fewer errors, and the referencing problem in the introduction. So a 7 for coherence cohesion it is. Next up is vocabulary. So first of all, I'm going to look through the writing and judge it in terms of vocabulary range. Then I'm going to go back and have a look at the errors and make my final verdict at the end. So let's start with that. About paraphrasing, in the question it uses problems. This person uses drawbacks. That's good. Benefits instead of advantages. Nice. Utilization, that's nice vocabulary. Does more good than harm is a very nice phrase. That's very natural. Negatives is another paraphrase of advantages. Use the internet anonymously, nice phrase. Spread fake news, nice collocation. Online forums. Trace the source of incorrect information online, very nice piece of vocabulary. Trace the source of something is a good collocation. The source of information is another good collocation. People may be easily misled. Misled's nice language. Important and useful features, nice language. Enhancing people's connections is good collocation as well. Access, video chatting, online conferences, popular, relatives, overseas, in real time is a nice description and very clear for the idea he wants to communicate here. Invented, maintain social relationships, good collocation. Online, good topic vocabulary. Purchase, clicking buttons, more topic vocabulary. Convenience, weigh against. These problems need to be weighed against the benefits, very nice vocabulary. Social and time-saving benefits, great language, good summary as well. And that's it. Okay, about the range of vocabulary, I think there's enough there for a 7. I wouldn't give it an 8 though. I think there needs to be a greater range still, or more precise vocabulary. Let's have a look at errors though, because the errors need to be low as well. I would count these problems as errors because these are not drawbacks. The drawbacks of controlling and securing information, so it kind of indicates a misunderstanding of what drawbacks means, really, or a misuse of the word drawbacks with these words. Could and can, I would regard this more as a grammar error. It's not really a misunderstanding of the word, it's more of a misunderstanding of the grammar. Available, I would count that as a vocabulary error because it doesn't really go with having more access to something. Apart from that, there are no other vocabulary errors, so very few vocabulary errors. It's a 7. Grammar. Like with vocabulary, I'm first going to go through the writing and check out range of grammar and complex sentences, and then I'll go back and have a look at error-free sentences because there need to be a certain number of error-free sentences for the higher bands. So, I'll start with range. I use a gerund here of controlling and securing. Uses Y in this sentence, that's nice. Most significant is superlative. Can, a modal verb. Without using is another gerund. He's also making a complex sentence here using without as a subordinate conjunction. Here's the comma, here's a subordinate clause, here's the main clause, so it's a complex sentence. Here's another complex sentence that he's making here with since, because here's the subordinate clause and here's the main clause. Here's another gerund, a noun phrase that he's making here. Something is enhancing people's connections around the world. Comparative grammar. Who live is a relative clause, so that's another complex sentence. Using, another gerund. A conditional, another gerund. By clicking, because of is a nice conjunction. Another complex sentence with although. Be weighed against is passive voice. He's got a good range of grammar. I think enough for a 7, not more than that. There need to be a greater range. The next issue though is about error-free sentences, and I have a feeling he's going to fall short of that, so that might bring down his score. Let's have a look. The drawbacks, that's an error. So okay, in the introduction, that's 1 out of 2 sentences was error-free. First body paragraph, only one sentence here has an error. The can, whoops, not that one, this one. The can and could has an error. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 out of 4 sentences had an error. This is an error. This is an error. There's another error. This is an error. Here's another error. Another error. Another error. Another error. That's kind of the majority of sentences, it seems there. Another error. Too many errors. It's going to have to come down to a 6, I'd say. So that means, in total, the band is a 6.5. So overall, what do I like about this essay? Well, the coherence and cohesion is especially good. Like I mentioned, it's nearly flawless. There's some unnecessary repetition, a bit of unclear referencing at the beginning, and some of the errors make the writing a bit awkward to read at times, but very strong coherence and cohesion. Like I said, I'd understand if someone gave it an 8. If you're curious though, what kind of impact would it make on the overall band score if this had an 8? Well, unfortunately none, because the overall band score would be, 6.75 would be the average of these 4. But with individual tasks it's rounded down, so it'd still be a 6.5. Something else that's really good is the vocabulary. Really great range and very accurate as well. This person's vocabulary is very good. Of course, the main issue with the essay is really the introduction and conclusion, because the same error with paraphrasing the question is enough to give me doubts that perhaps he doesn't understand the question, and that's a big problem. Apart from that, the task achievement is very good. It could be a little bit clearer, a bit more developed in the first body paragraph, but apart from that, it's great. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video and found it useful. If you did, please leave a like and let me know in the comments, and perhaps I will make some more. If you want to see more corrections and example essays like this, then you can find some more in the essay archive on the IELTS Teacher website. And I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Until next time then.